So another day, another beautiful Balkan Show. Oh, I misspelled her name. Hello, everyone,
Hello everyone, Yasu, Prešendjete, Zdravite, Zdravo, Bună ziua, and ciao everyone.
and merhaba.
Exactly. Today we're gonna have quite an unusual episode. I don't think we had anything similar like before. So in the Balkans, it's typical. Lots of countries had something to do with communism, and today, as you can read in the episode, it's the communism in Albania, and what actually happened back then, and how it has the impact is still being present nowadays, and lots of fun facts or with quotation fun facts that happened back then regarding Albania and what was going on in the Balkans, and also the Albania and having impact in the world. Although it was really small and isolated, it still had some impact with Enver Hoxha, the dictator there, and lots of things going on with Soviet Union, China, Yugoslavia, lots of weird stuff. So it was a really exciting episode to say the least, and the guest was even more interesting, so to say.
Yes. We will talk all about these with Kristi Dhono. I spelled right.
I'm not Albanian, I guess so. Please, our followers, correct us if
Yeah.
I'm wrong. And Kristi, sorry if we made mistake.
Yeah. He's a young guy from Albania, Tirana. Weirdly, his education is about finance, but he has more interest about different subjects. Also, he's living in Germany and also studying there, doing masters and also working. It's like a typical Balkan lifestyle. So, yeah, the topic is good, the guest is good, and I hope you will enjoy.
And the hosts are, yeah,
Mm,
acceptable.
same.
We are giving our best. So sit back, relax, drive your car, cook, whatever you're doing. Just, yeah, have a nice time. And yeah, without further ado, let's start this episode.
Yeah, let's start the episode. And also, please like, subscribe, check the links below about the episode. And yeah, enjoy.
Let's go. And show goes on.
Hello, welcome to another episode.
Yeah, we could have said show must go on, but still would not be so original. So let's keep it like show goes on. Welcome, Kristi, to our newest episode.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure having you. When Onat and I usually start for our guests to be more relaxed and just to have like a smooth ride, we start off with not so much relevant questions. For us, they're relevant, but maybe for you are not. But yeah, just to start off, Onat, if you may.
Yeah, I mean, it is related with the answer. It might be relevant, it might not.
Yeah.
So my question at this part is, what is your first memory as a child, as a kid? Like,
my first memory as a kid. Let me see. It's been a bit back in time, but let me think.
Blast from the past.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it is very like partial stuff. You are not sure is it really like true or like someone told me that. But sometimes it comes with like good.
Yeah, I think there was a park near my home where I used to play. I think that would be the kind of the earliest memory.
Yeah, we don't want to pull out any traumas, you know. You can...
As far as I remember, it's okay.
I think this is the second time with the park answer.
Yeah, right? True. We just started with it recently, but yeah, I still, Who knows? Who would have guessed that kids go to parks? Yeah, big thing. My question is also relevant to the childhood. So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grow up?
An astronaut, I think. Yeah, the first profession would be an astronaut.
Oh, I envy you. I wanted to be that like a few years ago. That's right. So you were, yeah. Albania didn't have a space program back then.
No, unfortunately.
Nor does it today, I
Yeah,
guess.
so it's not that I missed the chance.
But it's a really good starting point, as I mentioned about Albania, and you coming from Albania. Could you tell us a bit more about your Balkan roots? So where exactly are you from? Where are you right now?
Yeah, I come from a city in the southeast of Albania. It's called Korça. It's quite close to
good beer,
Macedonia and to beer, yeah, and to Greece. Now it's August. In the middle of August, we have the beer fest there. So yeah, it's
nice,
associated with that.
Second guess that we start off like this, like I'm from this city. Oh, this city has a good beer.
I mean, it's Balkans, so
I know my beer in there.
If it's not a bit alcohol, it cannot be Balkans.
Yeah, true.
Right. Yeah, but now as many Balkan people, I am in Germany.
Still not surprising.
Yeah.
But yeah. Our audience can also know from just reading the name of the episode what's our main focus today, and it's about the communist period of Albania and how actually people perceive it from this point of view of today. And could you tell us a bit more? When did it started? The communism in Albania, how it was it? I mean, you probably have the stories from your parents, grandparents, and also from reading books and TV. How was it?
Okay, so I mean, communism started in the end of the Second World War in Albania. This was in November 1944. Like Albania is kind of one of the only countries, let's say, in Europe, which liberated itself without the help of the Red Army or the Western Allies. So we have a big debate whether it's the 28th or 29th of November, the day of liberation. I mean, just a stupid political debate which serves nobody, but it's Balkans. So, and officially, we would say, let's say, de jure, it started in 1946 with the abolishment of the monarchy and the creation of the People's Republic of Albania. And it lasted until 1992, at least until March 1992, like officially, but the democratic changes, we could say, started in the end of the 1999 and beginning of 1991.
Interesting what you mentioned about liberating itself. I was always taught, and I never connected the reality that Yugoslavia was one of the ones that also liberated themselves. Then think about it. Actually, the Soviets kicked in really hard from the east at some point. They just supported the trust, the trust that was going from the Yugoslav partisans. But now when you mention, actually, yeah, Albania is the one that do it completely themselves, of course, with having supplied with arms and stuff from the allies, of course, but nevertheless on the ground from themselves. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, kudos.
So what is the text between like 29, 28 debate?
Yeah, I mean the 29th is the official day and is more preferred, let's say, by the Socialist Party, which is the like the continuation of the Communist Party in Albania. The 28th is preferred more by the opposition, the Democrats. And the idea behind this is when essentially the last German left the last city in Albania, which was Shkodër in the north of the country. I mean, sometimes it can become really silly, like when the last German left. But the historical part was that since Albania was connected to Yugoslavia in the end of the Second World War until 1948, the two countries wanted to kind of join their holidays. And so the Yugoslav holiday was on the 29th of November. And also another even more important reason is that on the 28th of November, it's the Independence Day of Albania. So it's so that the dictator didn't want to be, let's say, minuscule by this Independence Day. He wanted to have his own day of praising, let's say. So he chose the 29th.
Very familiar.
It's very small picking, cherry picking. Okay, I got it. I mean, in my case, I would just take both of them. You have two holiday, so free days off.
Actually,
so,
we have, and we also have a tendency to make a holiday every weekday. So to have a really big holiday, let's say five days in the end of November. So Albanians really enjoy that, even though it comes with this famous debate.
Nice, yeah. Got the positive side from it. Yeah, pretty cool.
Almost for the first time I hear something, the people getting benefits from a political debate.
Yeah, true. Almost never happens. Correct. So you mentioned Enver Hoxha. For our audience that don't know, most of the people in the Balkans heard there and so, especially younger generations, not so much. Outside Albania, of course, and Kosovo. Could you tell us who he was?
Enver Hoxha from 1944 to 1985. His death was the Iron Leader or the Stalin of Albania, we can say. He came from the south of the country, from Gjirokastra, from a well-to-do, let's say, family. He had some, let's say, schooling in France, but not so educated and not so much schooling, and he essentially jumped on the opportunity to become the head of the Communist Party. It was by luck. I mean, it's not that he was among the first who was engaged. Like in Albania, the first communist groups started functioning in the 30s, I think, during the reign of King Zog, and then the proper Communist Party was founded in November 1941. He was just a member in the meeting of the founding, but he kind of developed a really good friendship with one of the two delegates sent by the Yugoslav Communist Party to help in the creation of the Albanian Communist Party, and from there he kickstarted his career to become the top guy.
Interesting. So he became by chance, but did he really do something special, like kill them or whatever, or was the Game of Thrones, or just by chance?
The killing started from the war, but later he got even more specialized as his power grew. But I mean, during the war, the main idea was not to leave the other resistance, because in Albania it was, as in other countries, it was not only one group of resistance. So there were the communists, there were also the nationalists. Some of them cooperated also with the enemy, with the Germans, but some of them were really patriots. And there were also a league of, let's say, people who wanted the king to return back. And in 1943, these different groups managed actually to have some kind of an agreement between them to fight together. But this
agreement in the Balkans.
Yeah, but
again, another surprise.
Don't worry, very soon it collapsed because
so not surprising at all.
They understood that they didn't want to share power, and also there were some implications with the borders. So the agreement would involve, let's say, renegotiation of the borders, let's say the issue of Kosovo and everything. And the Yugoslav, let's say, advisors in the Communist Party told them that this was a big no-no. So the communists essentially started to fight with the side of the nationalists, and this was the first idea, let's say, and the first path to the power.
So the thing that broke the mules back was the issue of Kosovo, and basically, since Yugoslavs sent their agenda and the communists in Albania were backed by the Yugoslav communists, so they need to follow their
one of the reasons. But I suspect that power was even more important.
It's always, it's always like they also, hitting their bosoms and saying, no, we are patriots and stuff. Here's a bit of power and you need to give away something. Here, take some more.
Exactly.
Give me the power. Unfortunately, it always works like that. So he came to power somehow, as you said. It's still not clear how he came to power, right? He just stick to them and he just got elected and just keep on collecting power more and more.
I mean, eventually during the war, he was one of the organizers of the partisan army, and I mean, from there on, he led them, and there was some merit on his side. But his beginning was purely by chance.
Interesting. And then when he came to power, as you said, then the purge began, the killings and everything of everyone that was against him, right?
Yes.
So how was it? I mean, it was like specifically targeting some groups or just any enemy, or
I mean, it was groups, it was individual enemies. So and it sometimes it could be quite strange. For example, in 1948, they targeted one high-ranking politician. His name was Nako Spiru, and he was against the cooperation with Yugoslavs because he thought that Albania was losing its independence, which it was actually doing. So at the moment that he was killed, essentially they were building the ministries and everything for Albania to become the seventh Yugoslav Republic. Of course, this was done with the blessing of the USSR and Stalin. But I mean, he was executed on the order of the interior minister. And then some months later, Albania breaks diplomatic relations with Yugoslavia. It's the first, let's say, split of Albania with another country. The minister who executed Nagospiru is now executed, and Nagospiru is again rehabilitated because, yeah, he had actually fought for the right side, but it was the fault of the evil Yugoslav serving minister that had actually executed him.
Such an irony. I mean, it was like doing the right thing, so to say, and just in a few months he was right, but too late, already dead and cold.
Exactly. And so it would continue for this, like until around the end of his life. Let's say there would be a supposed bombing of the Soviet embassy. Some people would be executed there, and then people who were like suspected to be connected with the Soviets would be executed after we broke the relations with the Soviets, and then again with the Chinese, to go on with the prime minister in 1981, which he killed for, to maybe consolidate his power, because he was feeling that he was, let's say, in the end of his power, and he wanted to pave the way for his successor, but the prime minister shouldn't be the successor, so he just killed him. I mean, it's effectively the prime minister killed himself, but yeah.
Okay, just let the track down a bit before what you said. You said a lot of stuff. I mean, it sounds like Albania has a big issues with keeping a relationship going. Should have done some couples therapy at some point, because just breaking off with this one, just cherry picking, it's just insane. So you first mentioned he broke up with Yugoslavia. Yes. Yugoslavia wanted to have, like, I remember Yugoslavia wanted to have like a great Balkan federation, including Yugoslav countries back then, plus Albania, plus Bulgaria. And there was also planned to some extent Romania and Greece, if Greece and the Greek communists won there. Yeah. But the thing, it didn't work. Tito wanted lots of power, and Hoxha and Tito broke off. And then another lover was Soviet Union, and it lasted to some extent, as I understood what you said. And then at some point they broke off. The reason was why?
I mean, power. Still the power of Hoxha. Like so it's the idea that in the early 60s, the Soviet Union was kind of liberalizing after the so-called secret speech from Khrushchev in 1956, in which he denounced Stalin and his, let's say, use of repression. Khrushchev decided that he had to replace some of the leaders, let's say, of the satellite countries. So we had changes in Poland, in Hungary, and Hoxha feared that he might be the next. So he decided that actually he didn't want that. I mean, officially it was for ideological reasons, because the Soviet Union was becoming too liberal, but in the end it was power.
Yeah. Just saying in a sentence, Soviet Union becoming liberal, just
But compared to us, I think they were compared to what we became.
They're getting. They were getting to some level of having things not so strict as before. After Stalin. After Stalin, everything is different. For sure, it's not as easy to compare. So they broke up with Soviets. Do you know the story for our audience, to share a bit more? When they broke up with Soviets, the story behind Soviet submarines in Albania.
Okay, that's nice. We even have a movie for that. I mean, a very idealized movie. Yeah. The idea is that
we can share it in our description if it has some link.
I can share it. The idea is that the
thank you.
Soviets built this submarine base near the city of Lora because it was a very good strategic position, and essentially I think there were like 12 submarines, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And in the moment when they decided like to leave, the Soviets wanted to take all the submarines with them. Our side said that, let's say, some of the submarines are Albanian. I didn't know why they were Albanian, but still, they considered it to be so.
Commissions.
And
Commission, yeah, they were
they,
commissioned.
and they left here 4 of the submarines. I mean, the movie idealizes everything. The movie, of course, didn't say that the head of the base was executed 1 year later, I think, because of his role as a traitor, even though he kept the submarines. But yeah, these are the paradoxes of the communist regime in Albania. But this is the idea, and we ended up with 4
But he was
submarines.
Albanian.
Yes, the Albanian head, yeah.
So from 12, you kept 4 and you gave back 8.
Yes.
Right? Because on the internet it's just circling that they stole the Soviet submarines. Nobody said that they stole just one part, and the rest they gave back.
I mean, I think there was some kind of commission that decided how to split these submarines, but they already did some preparations for war, because I read somewhere that this was considered like shameful for the Soviet Union to just go without having war. But the idea was that they didn't need the base anymore. Like, they had the intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they didn't need a base in the Adriatic, so they just didn't bother to have a war. That was the idea.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. After World War II, all the communist countries were Soviet satellites. At some point, Yugoslavia broke off in 1948, and it became independent communist country, so to say. And Albania did this in 1996. So from Yugoslavia 1948 to 1961 from Soviet Union. And when you look at the map, Albania was the most western. Or no, actually, East Germany was the most western communist satellite, but Albania was the most southern one and the most closest one to other west part. And but the thing was, I guess it was easier for Albania to break off from Soviet Union than Czechoslovakia tried or Hungary tried, because there was no land connection to go invade. You need to go through Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia is already one thing on its own. So you need to go to a neutral country, and it was like a big thing. So like, F it, let it go, let it be.
And it was a very small country, so I mean, it's not that they had it had any real use, let's say, to the Soviet Union. We are actually kind of taking loans from the Soviet Union more than helping them for something. So.
Yeah, I understand. And people also need to understand at that point, so Albania was only having land border with Greece and Yugoslavia.
Yes.
That's it. And so basically sealed off. Also, Greece was a capitalist NATO country, Italy on the other side as well. So yeah, from that point on. And also somebody said some story about Soviet planes that they could not fly. So the country was so small that they could not have the super speed. So they didn't use them at all, because if they use the super speed, they already reached the NATO airspace.
Yeah, I haven't heard this, but yeah, maybe it's possible. I mean, the country from the north to the south, like it's like 355 kilometers, I think so.
Yeah. If some of our audience knows, please write to us. But there's some story like they could not use the maximum thing because they'll end up in another country. Yeah, that's the cool, interesting part. And after you broke up with Soviet Union, again you find another girlfriend and or boyfriend. This was China. Is it just, did they plan already? Like, okay, we're gonna end with Soviet, but we already have our stashed China in the background. Like now we step in, or it was like just
I mean,
go with
it was some kind of coincidence, even though this was a distance relationship, a very big distance relationship. It was a coincidence because the Chinese at the moment also broke the relations with the USSR, and they found, let's say, Albania. For the Chinese, Albania had more benefits than for the Soviets, because at the moment China was not in the UN, while Albania was. So Albania could, let's say, constantly keep the issue like that China should be in the UN. At the moment, the seat of China, at that moment, the seat of China in the UN was actually taken by Taiwan, and it was actually by a resolution which was proposed by Albania in 1971 that China, like the People's Republic of China, took the place of Taiwan. So it kind of served some purpose. And of course, it was a very good broadcasting center, let's say, to spread the Chinese messages in the whole of Europe. It was closed, and the Chinese could not do that from, let's say, their own space. So yeah, they needed Albania, and Albania was happy to help because it received some, let's say, assistance, even though it was not as superior in quality as the Soviet one was, but still, it was assistance.
Yeah, better something than nothing.
Yeah.
But how was the impact on the society in terms of like, was there any Chinese schools there or whatever that people learn Chinese in Albania?
No, actually, we didn't reach up to that level. I mean, people started to learn Serbo-Croat when we were aligned with the Yugoslavs, and Russian when we were aligned with the Russians. But no, with the Chinese, we didn't reach that level. I don't know why, actually, but yeah,
it is too hard, comrades.
Yeah, too hard. But imagine like Albanian comparing to any Slavic language has nothing to do with it. So starting off with Serbo-Croatian, oh man, this is hard. Then starting with Russian, oh man, this is also hard. Chinese, no, I'm fed up. No, please, no.
I mean, just imagine being in elementary school in around 1946. You have to go through different languages, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Elementary, then high school, then university, everything changed in like 15 years.
Yeah. But
literally.
I mean, other, let's say, impacts on the society, we had some small imports, let's say, of this cultural revolution, but not very big. We had these, let's say, papers that would be put in the neighborhoods criticizing behaviors like they would do in China, like bad behaviors. In the army, they had this idea that they just disbanded all the grades, like the army was now a guerrilla army, like everyone equal, like in China.
Really?
Yeah.
There was no like a standard army when they started making this cooperation with China. They just became like an unorganized group of people with guns.
The idea was some kind of, let's say, popular resistance, guerrilla warfare. So they had some kind of organization, but not this hierarchy. Let's say the military ranks were abolished in that under the, let's say, influence of China. And these were some of the crazy things that we did.
So I know that at that point when it was also in the same year the Chinese-Russian split or Sino-Soviet split, that only Albania step in for China and Somalia for some reason. So in the communist world there was like Soviet states, Soviet satellites, East Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia. And then on the other side was China, Albania, and Somalia. And on the third side, completely isolated, was Yugoslavia. Isolated case, not isolated in that sense, but like completely different type of communism, which cooperate with the West and with non-alignment movement and all the other things. But Albania for itself was also, in this historical sense, very unique thing, globally speaking.
I mean,
and as you said, Please.
I mean, there was some kind of meeting in Moscow in 1960 or 1961, I don't remember correctly, of the communist parties. And I mean, the Albanians had already made up their mind about what they were going to do. And they kept this ideologically pure, let's say, stance. And China did the same. So that's why the interest of both countries, let's say, converged at that point.
To be like a hardcore Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah, even though it was, in reality, it was to keep the power of Hoxha and of Mao.
Obviously, yeah, as it always does. Yeah, also it was a thing in Yugoslavia. They were like, we are breaking off. We don't want this type of communism in Russia. We are developing our own type of communism, which was in the end really a specific one. But in the end was just Tito keeping power here for himself and not being dependent from Stalin from Moscow. That's, again, reading through the lines, as you said. Yeah. So simple again. But yeah, we were the only ones, Yugoslavia, Albania, and China had like, okay, much more power in that sense, and he could easily split off. But splitting off from our side was like a big thing. Yeah. But this is talking from the point of view of international relations that Albania had. So they had like, before we divert into internal things during communism period. So during this period with China, how long it lasts and when did it break up again?
Yeah, like the relation with the Soviets kind of deteriorated during the 60s. So during the beginning, let's say, of the 60s, we had this relation with China, and then it really deteriorated in 1972 after Nixon went in China, because we had this idea that China also liberalized itself. It was essentially the same fear that maybe now China became more liberal. Also at that period, Mao Zedong died, so there was replacement of leadership in China. The same fear that maybe there was also replacement of leadership in Albania. So combined with the American fear, let's say, we decided that we split also from the Chinese.
And from that point off, you were like having a break.
Yeah.
Relationships.
And then we, in 1976, we create a new constitution. We changed the name of the country. We had the socialist now, like Socialist People's Republic of Albania. And we decided we are going to build socialism with our own power, no need for anyone else, even though we would need them. And we, even during the, let's say, after 1985, we started diplomatic relations with some countries, but they still were just diplomatic relations, like no economic cooperation or things like this, because that was constitutionally prohibited.
To have economic relationships with other countries,
yes,
right?
To take credits from there or everything. I mean, the idea was that we were going to build everything on our own.
So from 1976 up until the fall of communism in 1992 officially, so you were completely on your own autarkic system.
I would say mostly until 1985, because after the dictator died, his successor saw that, essentially he saw the writing on the wall, and he had to start some kind of cooperation with Western countries, mostly. Very small, but he had to start it.
How did they maintain until Enver Hoxha died?
Sorry?
Because it's not very. How they did maintain that being on your own
for 10 years, from 66, 76, 65, 75 until 85. Those
yeah,
last 10 years of his rule.
I mean, they maintained it.
I mean, did they really maintain it, or?
I mean, on paper they did, and actually they maintained it, but there was a huge drop in living standards of Albanians. Like they started the rationing, and food was scarce, materials were scarce, so it was accompanied by this.
So how does your family remember this period?
Well, let's say my parents were quite young at that moment, and so they don't tend to remember, let's say, the part of the rationing so much, but they would remember, for example, staying in line for milk or for this oil that they would use for cooking. So this would be some of the memories, like waking up really early to get this let's say to get the milk, for example, or this oil, and some kind of receipts which would specify, let's say, how much bread, how much cheese and meat you could buy each month. So everything was specified. You had this, let's say, receipt, and on that you could not buy more. Even if you had money, you could not buy more than that. So it was essentially rationing.
Yeah.
This is what they remember, like what was in that part, like what was in that receipt, and all the lining, and of course, some of the products of that time, which of course were all made in the country, nothing from outside.
So there was no smuggling involved, or something from Yugoslavia, or from Italy, or from Greece?
Even if it were, it would be really, really small. So
small scale.
Yeah.
How was in the terms of military service, and is it highly militarized society?
It was a really militarized society. I mean, military service was around 2 years, I think, or 18 months or 2 years.
Yeah, similar like in Yugoslavia.
Yeah. So apart from that, people would start from an early age with this, let's say, military education. They would learn how to use guns, because we were always living in the fear that we were going to be invaded, and not only by the West but also by the East. So the Soviets would come, the Americans would come, they would invade us, and so we needed to be, let's say, really, really strong. And there was this,
all the time.
there was this expression that like the enemy is keeping the gun pointed towards us, and we are going to keep the cannon pointed towards them. So we are really ready, and so this led to the craziness of bunkers.
That was the intro.
We built
to ask you about.
We built 173,000 of them, and yeah.
And for our audience, so a country of around 3 million of people and not so big in terms of space, built almost 180,000 bunkers in communist period. That's like
it was 17,000 on my mind. Like
no, 100.
it was already too much for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
please continue. And
I mean, it's crazy when you see the cost. It costs more than twice the marginal line between France and Germany. So, and it was thought that the cost of one bunker would be the cost of an apartment. So it was a moment in which Albania was facing a really harsh housing crisis, and we spent resources building bunkers. So yeah, this was one of the craziness. But the more let's say paranoid we were about the invasion and everything, we also had to acknowledge the fact that we were having very old military equipment. Like the military equipment was from the 60s, at the point in which, let's say, even our neighbors were having like much more modern weapons, and they were honestly trying to repair something, but repairing it, they were destroying something else. Like they were trying to create fuel, let's say, for the planes, but the fuel that was created in Albania for the planes actually ended up, let's say, being a problem for the engines. So they started having problems with the engines. So it was something like this. They were trying to do something, but destroying something much bigger.
You fix one, and you break two in the process.
Yes.
What are the sizes of them? Like I didn't have a chance to visit Albania yet, but I saw in the videos they're like small ones, but they're also like huge bunkers.
Like apartments, you have different sizes.
Yeah, but they're also like in the random place in the city. They're like in the park, in the middle of the park.
They were everywhere.
Bunkers.
They were everywhere, in the parks, in graveyards, in the mountains, and we even had them in the on the lawns in the best hotel in the country, which was in the capital. We had them even there, because you never know when you will be when the invasion comes. So that was the idea. Like people would actually do, let's say, these kind of trainings. So the alarm would ring, and they would try to find, let's say, the bunker, and together with the bunkers came also the tunnels. And people knew, let's say, in their homes in which tunnel they were assigned, so they would go to that tunnel. They could be really from small ones, let's say, fitting, let's say, one household, to very big ones fitting, let's say, several households. The majority of them are small, but there are some pretty big. And of course, two of them were anti-atomic, but they were for the top of the regime. They were in the capital.
Of course. Let the whole country die, we'll survive, and who will be ruled then? Yeah. Great logic.
Yeah,
great logic.
You know, people are reproducible.
Yeah, reproducible. We can import some. Yeah. As long as we're alive, everything is possible. Yeah, that's what they thought. Yeah, the elite. So the thing about the bunkers, I personally saw them, and I was mesmerized by them, to say the least. So we were in the south mostly, and traveling around to Tirana with my girlfriend, and I was playing the game. If you know from The Simpsons, I think from The Simpsons, when they see a blue Volkswagen, the Bart needs to hit Milhouse, or if I'm mistaken, please audience correct me. So there's one, and then he hits him in the arm. We didn't do the hitting, but nevertheless, I was like this: who saws first, he gets the point. So I was like, I saw this one first. There's in this around this bush. There's one there, behind this truck, behind this dumpster, and so on. But in the end, there was so much we just gave up. Nobody can kept the track of the points. It's just too much. We're too excited about. I remember being in some cafe near the beach and going down the stairs. There are 2 lines of stairs to go down from this cafe to the beach, and between was really with good graffiti placed bunker. You could not notice at first. I was like, oh, this is another one. I thought it was a cellar or something. So just random places wherever you go. Some of them are out because of water washed it away or something. Or I also heard another story. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That they have like those ones that are shaped like egg, and they put like halfway in, or cylindrical in the ground, halfway there. And there's also 2 hooks on top, or a couple of hooks. So it's like a transportable. The helicopter comes, takes it out, and brings it somewhere else if needed to pull back. To be honest, if that's truth, it doesn't make sense at all. If you have like 170,000, leave this one. You don't need to spend that fuel and maintenance, whatever, of this helicopter. Just leave it as it is and just go on.
I mean,
you'll find another one.
I haven't heard this, but I think they are pretty heavy to be taken by the helicopter, because this is the main problem. They cannot remove them. Like, it's very difficult to remove them, and maybe it can be true, but I'm not sure about this.
If you know those eggs ones, I heard about the eggs, so to say, eggs ones. Yeah. Maybe those ones, that's really small ones for the short ones.
Okay, maybe those, yeah.
Yeah, I saw also a few huge ones on the way to Girocastra. They're on the highway, or they're next by. Really huge ones on the road. Yeah, that was like, oh, this is XL size. Oh, nice. I didn't saw this one. So
what is the condition of them right now? Are they only used in some way, or I saw a few of them were used as like museums, in touristic ways, but like. For example, in Europe, some churches now being party houses.
Some of them are used. For example, these 2 atomic ones in Tirana, now they host some really interesting museum about the dictatorships, and throughout the country, let's say mostly in touristic areas, they use them like for different purposes. Some big one I think has become some kind of bar or something like this, and they have used them even to keep let's say different kind of cheese and and wine, these foods that you need to keep in darkness, but the majority of them are just staying there, deteriorating. It's difficult, let's say, to remove them, and there is no incentive to remove them.
Try this 1985 Enver Hoxha Chateaubriand from the bunker cellar. It's amazing year. Yeah, and I also heard that some of them keep them for livestock, keeping pigs, animals, whatever.
Sometimes even that, yes.
To go to waste, and toilets as well.
Sometimes even that.
Yeah, public toilet with no sewer. You just go and leave it there, and it doesn't go out. But like 170,000. I mean, it's still. I think even bigger countries don't have so much. It's just, you see the paranoia. You said it correctly. It was a paranoia which was never placed in reality, because they also from Yugoslav point of view, there's even some movie it's around 2005 it was published. It's called Karaula. It's also Turkish one, Karaul. It's just the expression of having a military settlement nearby the border, just
Karakol,
or that said it like that. Yeah, correct. I don't know how you say it in Albania. Is it similar?
No word like this is coming now in my mind, but no, it's
coming. Yeah.
But for Karakol, we use in general police station.
So we use it only for military barracks and stuff on the border. And this one was a movie about having the one during the 80s from Yugoslav point of view, looking at it was in Macedonia, present-day Macedonia, and looking towards Albania and having paranoia from this side. Oh, we need to prepare. Albanians will come at some point. Be prepared. But it's just like a tragic comedy, whatever. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know if it was like that for real, but they were also militarizing this area because they know Albania from other side was keeping like out of bunkers, militarizing. So they were like, okay, let's militarize just in case, but there was never a plan to invade Albania. Not that I know.
Yeah.
Maybe in 1948 when they broke up, they were like maybe change the, but they didn't. Maybe they had bigger issues with the Soviets, so maybe it was also the thing back then. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's a speculation. Somebody
actually,
knows for sure.
yeah, but actually, if you, let's say, if you go to my city from the capital, you have to pass very near with Lake Ohrid, and you can see a very big bunker which is pointed towards Macedonia. So, I mean, that was one of the points from which they were expecting the invasion. So, yeah, from the Albanian side, it was really, let's say, expected.
As you said, like they're pointing a gun, will point out
The cannon, yes.
and from the other side they see the cannon, so they bring up the bigger cannon. So it just goes, like the cartoon, back and forward, back and forward. So I guess that's how it went.
We also have one movie of the Cem Yılmaz, that guy who made the space movie.
Gora.
In one of his movies, one of his movies, they're going to the Bulgaria for trade fair, and they somehow involved in a manhunt of some rich family. And while they are running away from them, they find a bunker, like Soviet bunker, and the guy inside they're still like waiting, like reporting to outside. They don't know what happened to Soviet Union, and they're actually Azerbaijani, like they, and then they can communicate and they're helping each other.
Yeah, for our audience to know, I know this story. The Soviet Bulgaria was part of the Warsaw Pact until the end, and because Turkey was part of NATO Pact, they also put some bunkers between Bulgaria and Turkey, and Azerbaijan was part of Soviet Union. So there you go. Yeah, some Azerbaijani was left behind 20-30 years. Yeah, cool. So as you explained, besides bunkers, they were lacking. Actually, there was nothing else more. Infrastructurally in that sense built. It were lacking apartments, having also shortages, need to do rationing. Towards the end of communism, what kicked the bucket, like to finally switch from communism to capitalism?
Yeah, I mean, it was essentially what was happening in the rest of Europe. So we could be isolated, but in the end, we were impacted by what was happening. So not everyone knew actually what was happening because everything was really censored. But some people had the possibility to get it. Like this is another story from communist Albania. People would build these antennas themselves to try and catch signals from Italy or from Yugoslav and Greek, let's say, TV stations, respectively from the point in which they were in the country. And you need to be very careful because your neighbor can go out during the night and see that you have an antenna and then report you to the secret police. But eventually, towards the end of the regime, like everything started to, let's say, just slide, and they some of them, let's say, understood, knew that the Berlin Wall had fallen, like the countries were opening up. And in January 1990, we have the first demonstrations in the north, like in the city Shkodër, which was known, let's say, to be one of the most anti-communistic. They wanted to remove the statue of Stalin there. That didn't succeed very much, but then in July of the same year, we have a lot of people who enter the foreign embassies in Tirana, and they just seek political asylum. And then the government understands that this is now something international because they are now seeking asylum, and the government does something like gives passports to ordinary people just to leave the country. It has not done this in 45 years because you could not go out of the country. It was forbidden. So, of course, you didn't have a passport. And the first people leave, more people want to leave. And then on December of that year, on the 8th of December, students going to protest. They require, let's say, better living conditions, but also declaration of pluralism and everything. And now we celebrate on the 8th of December the Youth Day to commemorate that. And on the 11th of December, the government says, okay, we are going to have pluralism. The next day, we form, let's say, the opposition party, the Democratic Party, and on March 91 we go into elections, the first pluralist elections in Albania, let's say in 45 years. The Communist Party wins, but still the new opposition wins with gains around 40% of the vote, which is considerable, considering that it had only been 3 months since political liberalism was allowed. And then due to instability of the government and let's say it was a system which was in transition, but you had the Communist Party on the top, so it could not function, and eventually it will lead to instability. And then 1 year later, they declare also again elections, and the Democratic Party wins, and that is the end of the, let's say, communist era in Albania.
But I need to come back to what you said about having these antennas and trying to hear something from the outside. So for our audience to understand, and for us as well, so Albania was so much isolated. So as you said, it was no option to have passport to leave the country. You could not have foreign TV or foreign radio. You need to do in secrecy. So having this knowledge about the whole world outside Albania was really, scarce.
Yes.
And from that point of view, having option to finally have some pluralism, have some other voice besides communism or communist dictatorship was a big thing. I can imagine it's just from out of nowhere. And that's, people don't understand how did communists win again, because they're just starting to hear about other options, which they were used to other, just having only one option for 45 years. It just takes time.
Yeah, I mean,
it reminded me the movie. Was it a movie or some sort of I guess it was a Chuck Norris let's say communism. It is telling the story about the communism era in Romania, where people were smuggling the movies, and there was one lady, and he did dubbing. She did dubbing for thousands of movies, and people were just selling them on the black market and just watching the Hollywood movies. And I guess they are the Ceausescu's attempt to ban those, where lead the young people to do more do like street protests and stuff.
So they were against the banning of those Hollywood movies, right? So
yeah, I mean, it was banned like in Albania,
yes,
as I understand. Well, it reminded me that.
But
the cultural influence from the West is something you cannot run away.
There is also another interesting story about that. In the beginning of the 70s, we had some very small, let's say, sense of liberalization. And let's say some artists decide to go a bit further, and a music festival is held every year in Albania. And in this one, they experiment just a little bit with the trends of the times, like a bit of rock and roll, but I mean minimal one. And this goes very bad because the dictatorship retaliates in a very bad way. Like some of the let's say singers and the organizers of the festival are not executed, but they are let's say imprisoned, and their families are exiled, because we had also this: if you were imprisoned, then your family would be interned in, let's say, a very remote place. So we had also this aspect to really keep you afraid, let's say, that you were not only the one who was going to be punished, but also your family.
Oh, it's collective punishment.
Collective punishment.
Oh, I also heard there were also some labor camps.
Yes.
They were present throughout the whole period of communism?
Yes, throughout the whole period, yes.
Oh, there's something different. In Yugoslavia was up until 50s, 50-something. There was one island in Croatia famous for this Goli Otok. It's like naked island. Not that people are naked there. The first time ever translated in English. Probably from all the hard work they stripped from their clothes.
Probably.
Yeah, but it was really hard treatment. But they had something. It was also Red Terror after the war, World War II, killing a lot of political enemies. but after 50s it kind of like became, because Yugoslavia was going towards the west, non-alignment movement. There was like more like rebel, trying something with market economy, blah blah, something between.
Let's not kill everyone that we want. Kind of
Yeah, exactly. Every king
liberalism.
Hey,
that kind
in
of
Albania,
exactly.
it was the opposite. The more time progressed, the more harsh the regime became. So,
Oof. To be honest, it sounds completely like North Korea.
yes, it's a nickname that is used for Albania, like North Korea of Europe.
Oh, that's not. Whenever you're called about North Korea, that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same with Korea. North Korea was actually in the beginning doing really good economically sense, better than South Korea.
Yes.
And then at one point it was deteriorating, getting more strict, more harsh, death camps, war labor camps, whatever you want. And now it's, we all know, to some at least as much as we can, we know about how it is in North Korea, or we speculate. Yeah. Well, that's harsh. And coming back to the actually, not coming back, I still have one question during this period. How was it for the minorities back then, and for the people of religion back then during the communist period of Albania?
Starting with religion, Albania declared itself in 1967 the first and only atheist country in the world. So in 1967, the government decided that religion was going to be banned, and of course it led this movement from the youth to go and destroy religious institutions. And
sound like, as you said, Cultural Revolution in China. They did the same stuff.
Yes. It was kind of inspired by that, but I mean, even China didn't say that we are now an let's say a country, an atheist country, while we actually even mentioned it in the constitution. So it was essentially forbidden to have a religion. Some people had some private ceremonies in throughout the period, but they would do things like, for example, check the hands of people during Easter period to detect if they had like red color, or during Ramadan they would just distribute candies to see if there would be people not eating them, so fasting.
Oh man!
So it was pretty hardcore.
Really hardcore. How they come up with this solution? I mean, it's right now from this point of view, it's easy, but back then, like, oh, we need to check them somehow. Go check their hands. Go to other Christians. These ones are Muslims. Go check if they're eating or not.
I mean, for
Insane.
these crazy, stupid ideas, we had a lot of ingenious people to come up with them. Unfortunately, but
that was the option for exporting.
Yeah, of course. But the idea was
also, unfortunately, they don't know about the religion, because if you eat by force during Ramadan, it won't break your fast.
Yeah, but the idea was that they needed, let's say, to do that at least to discover what. At least in their idea, that was how it functioned. I wouldn't say that they had, like, throughout the period, even before 1967, they didn't have the best relationship with religion, like all communist countries, but after that year, it was essentially prohibited. So not allowed. You had also conversion of, let's say, mosques or churches into theaters, sport fields, and the likes of this.
Wow. Yeah. Again, in parallel with Yugoslavia, it was like that at the beginning until the 50s, and it started gradually to tolerate it. So it was, again, progressing to some extent, and Albania was digressing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane. And the thing is, as well, about the minorities. How was for the minorities in Albania?
Yeah, about the minorities, we like the mostly discussed minorities, let's say the Greek one, because it was the biggest. The Greek minority was concentrated in like 99 villages in the south. So even if you were, let's say, Greek in another part of the country, you would not be considered part of the minority. So it was concentrated only on these areas, which had a high, let's say.
This area has the right to have minority. Other one doesn't have not the right.
Yes.
Okay.
And I mean, the treatment was good for a communist country. They were allowed their, let's say, education in their own language, but then everything else was the same as the rest of the Albanians. So sometimes they complain about freedom of religion, but it's not that the rest of the Albanians had the freedom of religion. And I mean, yeah, like this. If we speak about other minorities, about the like Montenegrins in the north or Macedonians, they were too small and yeah, maybe more integrated, let's say, into the Albanian community. While for the Roma and Egyptian people, as always in history, they were living, let's say, they had the lowest living standards. So sometimes not even
Totally.
profiting, let's say, from the regime, nothing. So yeah, but it continues to be even now a problem with them. So
Yeah, it's like in our countries, unfortunately. You mentioned Montenegrins, and that's Montenegrin Serbian community in the north. I know the story that during the Hoxha period, they were forbidden to have their names written Slavic,
yes,
they make it more Albanianized.
yes.
So they changed them, and even nowadays, I'm not sure if it's correct. Please, somebody write to us. I saw actually at least 20 years ago. Not all ones are also mid-age ones. They still have Albanianized names and surnames. But if you ask them what's also your name, actual name, then they say it. But in his ID or whatever, officially it's not there.
Yeah,
But like they have
that's
like
true.
two systems of names and surnames.
That's true. I mean, especially in the 70s, they decided that they were going to Albanianize on not only the name of the people, but also the name of the places. So you have places in Albania that have Slavic, let's say Slavic derived names, and they Albanianize them. And there is also a story of someone, I mean, the regime promoted the Illyrian names under the idea that Albanians are descendants of Illyrians. They promoted Illyrian names, and the father of a boy goes and he wants to, let's say, name the son after his grandfather, and the official says that like the grandfather is dead, name him after some Illyrian, and the father is like the Illyrians are dead also. So I mean, I don't see any reason, but yeah, it was like this. So Albanian names,
But they
Illyrian
are,
names.
yeah, much more dead than this
Yeah,
one. Yeah, so
but his name. I mean, names, religious names were strictly forbidden. Also, minority names. Yes, it's true.
oof, man. And also, what also impacted the language itself, as understood, the majority of Albanians speak this dialect of Gek, but because Enver Hoxha was speaking Tosk, you're all gonna speak Tosk.
Yeah, that's in 1972 they had to decide which of like let's say the standards of Albanian language, and the standard was based on the Tosk dialect. And even now it's too difficult, let's say, for the northerners to or okay, not too difficult, but it's more difficult because some things are different, some grammatical rules are different, and yeah, it was unfair because it was not only the northern of Albania, but also it was also Kosovo, Albanians living in Macedonia, Albanians living in Montenegro, which had to adapt to these rules.
I remember using Google Translate or some other online translator and using that to translate something Albanian to be nice to my friends and from Kosovo or whatever, and say it and like, yeah, okay, we don't say it like that, but Google said it like, no, it's just Tosk, we don't use it. Based on Tosk.
Sometimes the words can differ too much, and sometimes you cannot even understand. Sometimes,
Really?
yeah, the dialects have some differences.
That's insane. Oh, you had something to ask?
Yeah, I want to ask about the people's behavior during those periods. I mean, they were not allowed to go outside of the country, go abroad. They didn't have a right to have a passport. But now currently, how much was it? The current population of Albania around 2.5, 3 million, something like
3
that,
million.
right?
Now it's 2.8.
2.8. But in the world in general, it is around 7 million, I guess.
Yes.
So a lot of people run away from the country, but was it during those period or after that period?
Okay. Yeah.
And like, how was people running away if they
Yeah. I mean, from all the Albanians in the world, during that period from Albania, you didn't have much migration, so it can be in the hundreds the people who actually managed to escape. And the problem was that you, even if you managed to escape, which was really difficult, you had to think about your family back home. So once they realized that you had escaped, the family would bear the consequences, and it could also be execution. Internment was certain, but could also be execution. the creation of, let's say, this Albanian diaspora, it starts really early in Albania. It starts from actually from the Middle Ages, I would say. So Albanians moved from the Middle Ages, and then you have a very big moving after the Ottomans defeat like after Skanderberg dies and the Ottomans, let's say, defeat the other lords. So you have the first wave of Albanians who go into Italy, and they have lived there for like 500 years. And they are a big group, I would say. Arberesh, yes. I would say there are like in their maximum that could be around 500,000. So it's a very big group. You have then some movements in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century in America, creating the old Albanian diaspora in the US especially, also in Australia and Canada, not so much as in the US. And the majority of the Albanians, which are now, let's say, in places like Switzerland or Germany, okay, Germany before the 2010s, were people from were Albanians from Yugoslavia, so from Kosovo, from Serbia, from Macedonia, Montenegro. It was this Gastarbeiter program that the Germans and the Swiss and the Austrians initiated, and they traveled. I mean, they traveled there as Yugoslav citizens, but yeah, they were Albanians in nationality. So this is the idea. And then after communism, you have a very big number of people who migrate because the population was after communism it was even more than 3 million. It was around 3.5 if I'm not mistaken, and yeah, you had a huge influx of people going out. So that's why the numbers are quite big, and we have more Albanians out than Albanians in.
That's not a real often case. Croatians also like 3-4 times more than live in Croatia. Serbia's maybe double or triple, but yeah, so Albania it's like 3-4 times more than the people living in Albania itself. And also, what's also ironic nowadays that Albanians are the only country, one of the rare countries that are surrounded by themselves, because around Albania on the border are most Albanians. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Similar with Hungarians.
Yeah,
to some extent. Yeah, some guy from Albania told me this. I was like, yeah, when you mention this, yeah, it is like that. How was the relationship with the Albanians in Greece and Yugoslavia during communist period? Do they have at all relationship, or they flee to those countries, especially in Yugoslavia?
Yeah, in Greece there were no Albanians. After the Second World War, they were like the Albanians in Greece were the chumps, and after the Second World War, they were just expelled from Greece. So there were no Albanians in Greece. But in Yugoslavia, I mean, I've heard that in Kosovo, Hoxha is liked a lot, even though it's mentioned and it's kind of known that he didn't like Kosovo so much, and some people even, let's say, blame him for leaving Kosovo to the Yugoslavs. But the relations were, yeah, when we were in alliance with the Yugoslav, we kind of sacrificed them. And then when we were against the Yugoslavs, we would use them as a card, let's say, that we are interested for their right. But it was mostly some cultural relations. So, for example, in this Congress in which they decided the standard form of Albanian members, let's say, of Albanians from the Yugoslavia were invited, and we would help them with some school texts and everything, but much more than that, it was not something, let's say, bigger.
I know that Albanians in Yugoslavia were not living good conditions or high standard, but nevertheless, comparing to Albania, they were living in higher standard than Albania.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's like a conspiracy theory that I don't find any track in reality, that demographics in Yugoslavia, especially in Kosovo area, tipped quite in the direction of having more Albanians than Serbians quite a lot during this communist period, that like Tito allowed a lot of anti-Hoxha Albanians to come in, which when you compare the demographics of Albania and then the numbers that they say come in, doesn't make sense.
No, it's not like
phantoms came in. I know.
No, it's mainly due to, let's say, population growth in Kosovo, but no, it's not that Albanians came from Albania. Like it was impossible. Even if they came in the hundreds, they couldn't change the balance of populations, let's say.
I agree. Just compare separately the demographics of Albania, and you compare the
Yes.
numbers they're saying in Kosovo. It doesn't like they have like one baby. The minute they cross the border, like 10 babies.
Yeah.
Like just get fertile so much. I mean, suddenly it doesn't make sense. But that's the real conspiracy that I didn't buy at all. And plus, Tito allowing this is still like it doesn't make a sense again. But that's just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I have another one interesting question about Albania that I've discovered by being in Albania. The driving in Albania was quite an experience for me there. I see you're laughing there. I mean, it's like, okay, I know there are some crazy places in Balkans. I also drove in Georgia and stuff, and every time in Kosovo as well is not very much more different, but Albania was like some different level of craziness, and I was like, man, especially around Tirana, man, and I was like, why they're driving so crazy? And like I'm in the roundabout, so the circle area where you go with the car. So in normal places, the guy that needs to come inside doesn't have the right to go inside the circle. They wait for somebody to allow him. There's a space, they can go inside. No, when you're in the circle, so the guy who wants to enter it, he enter whenever he wants. So while in the circle, in the roundabout, you need to stop in the middle roundabout to let him in and avoid circus, avoid the catastrophe somehow. And then you can continue. It was okay. So after 2 days, I was there for almost 10 days. I learned, so I need to go crazy as they are, be more crazy than they, and then I can succeed. That's the only way possible.
Yeah, I would say,
good.
I mean, during communism, of course, we didn't have cars, and it was not allowed.
That was my point.
So
Sorry, I digressed a lot. That was the thing. Some explanation comes to communism. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe now we are enjoying, let's say, the freedom of having cars finally, and but yeah, the driving in Albania can be like that. You don't only have to see that you are abiding by the rules, but also you have to check what is happening around you and check twice what is happening around you, because that is what impacts you the most. But in Tirana, it's crazy. In the smaller cities, it can be it's better, but in Tirana, it's crazy.
Yeah, but as I drove in the south, like every kilometer or less, you see some graves, or not graves, but the tables with saying, "Oh, this guy died here, this guy died here." I was
Unfortunately,
like, oh man, it just gets so often. I was like, no matter, yeah, I'm not so surprised. Yeah. But coming back to that, with communism, there were not so many people in Albania driving cars at all during communism, right?
I mean, the only ones who are driving cars would be, let's say, the ones who would drive service cars, so they would not have their own cars. I mean, we really took seriously the thing that private property was not allowed, so you could not have a private car, let's say, and the cars were only state, or let's say some kind of corporation cars, and only the military and only the higher ups would have their own cars, let's say, with their drivers.
And after 1991, 1992, the sudden influx of a lot of cars and people having no experience in driving, most of them just suddenly overnight, just here you go crazy with it. And they literally went crazy with it.
Yes.
And it has explanation. It makes sense. I'm not judging. It's not their fault. Basically, they came up from this system overnight.
Yeah. But like many other freedoms that have been, let's say, newly introduced after communism, this is also one of them. So we tend to abuse that,
I think in that case, anyone would do the same. I mean,
maybe.
It's a human thing. You were like not allowed to have something, and for decades and generations, and then suddenly here you go overnight, go with it. Yeah.
But after 30 years, maybe they should have been satisfied, but they doesn't seem to. So
there's some period of tolerance, but after well, come on, you should follow some rules at some point. Yeah, great.
On the first grade of the school, we were not allowed to use the pen. We were just using the pencil, like the one you can erase. And on the second grade, we were allowed to use on the school, and I was only using that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just like I don't know why. It doesn't even make sense, but probably just not to paint yourself.
Maybe it's practical for the school teachers.
Once I get the permission from the teacher, I start writing everything with that, like with the color, with everything. So I just did that.
I see your parallel. You were forbidden to do something, and after the moment you got it, you're just going full ahead with that one. Yeah, I get it. the same thing. But do you know some other crazy stories after the in the 90s, especially after the fall of communism, this transition period? What happened?
Mm, I mean, the craziest of stories is what happened in 1997. I mean, the country almost went into a civil war.
I made an intro again for you. I kind of expected this. You will say this.
This
No,
was caused.
sadly, yeah.
This was caused by the so-called Ponzi schemes or pyramidal firms. The idea was that the people were very poor, so they had to endure these very low living standards, and they wanted to get rich quickly. That was natural. The problem was that the government allowed them, and so you suddenly have lots of firms promising that you give their money, and let's say in 2 months you are going to get twice of that or 3 times that. And in the beginning, this works. People see this, people see others, and people think like, "Am I stupid not to invest in this one?" And at some point, the idea behind that is that in the end it doesn't work. So in 1997, they start to, let's say, get bankrupt, and once one is bankrupt, the others fall like a house of cards. And then the people are angry, and so they demand from the government, like, why didn't you warn us? Because the government not only didn't stop that, but they kind of encouraged them and said that they are safe, even though they had, let's say some warnings from the IMF. And yeah, I mean, essentially the people get really angry, they demand their money back, and these political divisions start. So the South, let's say, especially in the South, you have the Socialist Party and supporters going full out of control of the government and everything. In the North, you have the sympathizers of the Democratic Party, which at the time was in power. So you have this idea that in every city was, let's say, independent. So it would have its own criminal gang. It would organize its own, let's say, hours of movement. So there was some kind of lockdown. Like you could only go out for some days, for some hours during the day. It was extremely dangerous to travel from one part of the country to the other, and
Wow.
like in Vlora, let's say in the south, which was the center of the rebellion, they even attacked the building of the secret service. They took hostage the guys. They killed two of them, I think. So it really went out of control. Yeah, in the Western media, it was portrayed like Albanians are two different nations. So the northern and the southern. I mean, they divide us based on political affiliations. So they said that the northerners are different and the southerners are different. In the end, it was just angry people who wanted their money, and then the situation gets even worse because you have this lower situation. People go and find the weapons in the weapons munition, and everyone gets pistols and guns and sometimes tanks and heavy munitions. You have people going out with tanks throughout the cities. And during that year, they also steal the treasury from let's say from the place in which it was kept, the state treasury. And
The central bank, state treasury.
yeah, it was kept somewhere like in some kind of mountainous area, but they eventually find it and steal it. I mean, investigations are ongoing. They never found who stole the majority of it and everything. They would implicate one another, like the politicians, but still, the idea is that the majority of it was gone. And yeah, in the end, it was the outside intervention which helped the government, let's say, to go into to take control of the situation. The president stepped down and they created a, let's say, salvation government, some kind of unity government, that it calmed down the situation.
So, to be honest, this story I found out too late. In my case, for me, it was too late. I think I knew all the crazy stories on the Balkans, but during university, I was like doing some research about Ponzi schemes. I was like, civil war in Albania, 1997, Ponzi scheme. What is this, like
Yeah.
a made up thing, or like how did I miss this? There's like foreign intervention. What? And I was like, people just getting out, as you said, guns everywhere, just flying and just doing anything what they want. Just the system,
Exactly.
whole government system fell apart. I was like, how did I know this? Is it like also like not so known thing internationally, or or not? Did you know about this thing?
No, never heard it.
It's just an exceptional thing, one-off thing that nobody wants to say about this thing. Yeah. But how was the thing that saying thing like 3 times in a row? How was the situation that at some point, just because of the Ponzi scheme, the government fell? So they were not fighting each other in the north and south. They were just fighting in the cities, in the local gangs, just having the power instead of government everywhere around.
Yes. But the idea was like, for example, let's say the Democratic Party, of course, would have its own, let's say, branch, even in the southern part. They would go also to fight with them. And they would be directly, let's say, against the president at the time was from the Democratic Party. So they would be directly against him, holding him responsible for the situations. So in the event, it escalated into war of gangs. So a gang was controlling the city. Sometimes a gang was controlling just a neighborhood and fighting with the other gangs. In the beginning it was against the state, and when the state was not existing anymore, it was against the other gangs.
So only how long it lasts?
It started I would say around like 3 to 6 months, something like this. If you take also like the bankruptcy and like the consolidation thing after the international forces arrived, it lasted like around 3 months, but with all this around 6 months.
And when the international forces came, how many did they came? What did they do? Did they also fight with them, or just they came and then said, "Although the teacher came, we're gonna be quiet now"?
For some of them, they had to. They mainly assisted, let's say, the government forces, but the main thing was that the president accepted to resign, and the government accepted to resign. Once they accepted to resign, they created a new unity government, and the main thing that was keeping, let's say, the idea that the president should go now, so there was not anymore this justification. So they started to kind of disband, and also the help from let's say the internationals. There were some countries like there was Italy, there was Greece, and I think there were also some other European countries, like around 10 countries, if I'm not mistaken. So there was some kind of involvement, yes.
But nobody was fighting with them. They just
No, it's not that they fought. No, it's not they really fought with them. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened with the president? He was safe afterwards.
He went on to become leader of the opposition. He also became prime minister for 2 mandates, so he was safe.
Okay.
And he's still active in political life now.
Again, typical Balkan, like nothing can wash off. Like he just come back, resurrect, like nothing happened before.
Either they got executed in Albania, or they just remain as political.
They mummify in the same position, or they politically die and then resurrect again.
That's the idea. If I would praise for something the last communist leader in Albania, it would be that he understood that he didn't want to end up like Ceausescu. And so he was like, let's be not so tough, and so kind of start the changes not to be executed. And once he was not executed, I think he set the precedent that nobody was going to get executed in Albania from the political elite.
Luckily, they were not connected with Romania as they did with China and Soviet Union. Oh no, we need to cut the ties. They get killed. We don't want to get killed.
No.
Rushing there. Do your parents remember this period? Have they shared some stories with you?
Yes. They remember it. They share this idea of people sometimes going on the streets with weapons, with looted things from supermarkets, let's say, or from different shops. Because if you don't have let's say a functioning state, you are going to get this. They have told me also about a tank patrolling the city until it ran out of fuel and they could not take rides on it anymore. So this kind
to
of
a gas station and they're out of gas.
it seems like Or maybe just the joy of riding the tank died off after some hours and they didn't want to ride it anymore. But yeah.
Hard to imagine. I'm trying a tank. I'm bored now. What can I find something else now? Is there some Soviet submarine stolen somewhere?
There's a video from the coup attempt in Turkey in 2016.
Yeah.
They were looking for the Erdogan in the in some west part of this country, and the tank stopped by in a market shop, and they asked for the direction.
Yeah, it just goes straight ahead. So practical, yeah, especially in the war. I forgot one really cool topic. We were like going towards the end of the communist area, but I need to go one step again back. One really amazing story I want to hear from you about the center of Tirana, about the famous block. How was it?
Yes.
And yeah, could you explain for our audience what was it so special about?
So Blloku was now Blloku is the fanciest area in Tirana, but before that it was the area in which all the political elite would live.
Beginning, it's also fancy for them.
Of course, yeah. That's why it's fancy now, because it was fancy back then. Yeah. I mean, beginning in the end of the Second World War, in the Blloku, there were like some of the nicest villas in Tirana, like the rich people, let's say, in Tirana at that time had villas in that area. And of course, when the communist government came, they just expropriated everyone, and they took the let's say villas for themselves. And with the passing of the time, they kind of really separated the neighborhood. So in the beginning, you had only guards. Then you had several layers of defense. So nobody that was not authorized could enter into the Blloku. And the Blloku was a different world. Like the Blloku was essentially kind of the West. Everything was allowed in the Blloku. Western food, medicine, luxuries were allowed in the Blloku. The Blloku always remind me of this Soviet story, like of Stalin and his ministers who wanted to help a poor Russian woman in the street and to give her a banknote, but then they realized that no one of them has a banknote because they don't really need them. So in the Blloku it was the same. You just would say something and it would just come to you, like no need for money, nothing.
Yeah.
The family of these persons would travel out of the country, would vacation there, of course, get cured there if they had any cases of illnesses. But living in the Blloku would have this problem of constant fear because you could get purged. So it's not that the same families were living throughout the period in Blloku, especially of except of one or two families, like the dictator's family. They were living all the time, but other families, they could just come and go, because if they got purged, of course, they would get kicked out of the Blloku.
No, I understand. Oh man, that's a tough one. You experience the richness, the nice life, and then suddenly you're taken away.
Yeah,
it's taken away everything.
Yes,
but basically they're living communist utopia by living under capitalist things inside of communist country. Basically,
exactly.
They have everything that capitalist country had, but inside. And how big was it? I mean, for our audience to understand, I saw it, but like it's 1 kilometer with 1 kilometer or even less.
Around that.
But I was also curious, how was it for the other people living around it? Could they see what's going on, or because there was no wall basically separating it from them?
I mean that was an area in which not so much buildings were at the time. So the buildings around that area are mostly ministries or the prime minister's office. So it was not that people were actually living it. Now, of course, you have these very high apartment buildings, but back then they didn't have that kind of let's say area, like living area surrounding that.
Yeah. Were there any checkpoints, like when you cannot? You said you cannot enter if you're not part of the elite.
Yes, there were checkpoints. Yes, checkpoints and armed guards, which would, like, there was the Blloku. There was also like the post Blloku. Post Blloku is essentially the place, like the checkpoint, the area before the Blloku, in which they would just see who was authorized to enter or not. There were some ordinary people entering because they were like doing services like barbers or tailors or things like this, but they were advised to keep for themselves what they saw there. So having fear, they mostly kept for themselves what they saw there.
Fascinating. I mean, another weird story completely that people would not like. My experience with the block when I was there, and one of my local Albanian friends was guiding me through it. And just at one point, we were passing some club in the middle, and then between two clubs, actually, he just said, "Look at this building here. Like, yeah, it looks like some old building from the 80s, not a specific club. Yeah, that's Enver Hoxha's residence. What? Yeah, and it's just standing there. Yeah, it's just standing there. It's like a museum or something. Nah, just there. I'm like, okay, just weird, unexpected. Like, yeah, what they plan to do with it? Just it stays there, and that's it.
I don't know, but I don't think it will stay for too long because that is a prime residential area. So they are trying to find areas which are expensive throughout Tirana. So I don't think it will stay for much longer in that condition.
Yeah, I think the same. But it's weird for me. I was also thinking about he just living there and nowhere else, and with his cronies around him and his elite, and just living the best of life.
He had residences throughout the country. Like he wanted to vacation, of course, he would have residences, but his main residence would be there.
Yeah, the same with Tito. Tito had, whenever you go around ex-Yugoslavia and you say, this place is so nice, it even has Tito's villa. Of course he has Tito's villa. He would choose the best place for himself.
Yes.
That's like the level of quality. If it has Tito's villa, then it's a real thing. It's a mark of quality. So I can imagine it's the same thing with dictators. They have a parallel thing. Yeah. It's not so hard to compare. But yeah, I also need to say about this block that I tried the best ice cream I ever tried in my life. Honestly, it's a mixture of Albanian artistry with ice creams combined with gelato, Italian gelato.
Yes.
Because the guy left Albania in 1991, went to Italy, perfected the Italian gelato, came back, then combined with Turkish, Albanian mix of, and voila.
Yeah, that's pretty common nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah, they just come from Italy, and it's. Yeah. I remember pictures. It's like a sad picture, like out in 1991. So a lot of people are, as you said, fleeing the country. Yes. And I saw a picture of a big ship entering some Italian port. It was overcrowded, and people are jumping over the board just to reach the coast. That's people just fleeing in huge numbers. I guess. And the first country was Greece and Italy.
Yeah, Greece and Italy throughout the period, of course. There was also like a tragic record because many people trying to get into Greece, they maybe froze in the mountains, or some of one of the ships especially sank, and it sank or it was sunk by the Italian Navy. This is still not so clear, but I mean, in the end, it was people's life that were lost. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know nowadays, like when I meet some people from Greece around Europe, and they actually turn out to be Albanian, and I just said, did your parents flee in the 90s? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's mostly that connection. Yeah, but how would you say nowadays? What's the heritage of the communism in Albania nowadays, besides crazy driving that we mentioned?
I mean, not to blacken everything, it did some good things, I would say. Like it built some infrastructure until the 70s. It really built some infrastructure. It like eradicated some diseases. It kind of, let's say, changed the landscape. So we had lots of these swamps. They kind of let's say turned them into fields and everything. They developed the economy up to some level. Like from Albania after the Second World War was into some kind of feudalism, if I would say. So you had the very big landowners, and you had many people working their lands, and they kind of brought, let's say, agriculture more into the 20th century. They kind of improved the education system, even though they indoctrinated it with their, let's say, elements with communism and everything. So these are some things that we can see now. For example, we have now, let's say, the first university in Albania was created during that period, and many studies for cultural things or for scientific things come from that period. But yeah, people of course tend to think much more about the abuse of power, the human rights violations. The old generation remembers it with sometimes with nostalgia. The majority of them maybe would like to return to that kind of system because that was the idea that the job was secure. You would get a free housing from the government, and especially after they saw what happened in the 90s and they experienced the poverty, let's say, it was a population that was used to getting provided for from the state. So healthcare was free, education was free. They would get the home, the job from the state, and now they had to do them on their own. So they had everything was private, and they saw this, and they of course didn't like it. On the other side, those who spend their times in the prisons and in internment camps, of course, could not find anything good about this system. So it's a half-half situation. Sometimes people live in extreme situations in which they know very well who was the spy, let's say, who sent them in prison, and sometimes they even see him every day in the street, and sometimes that resulted that it was a friend or someone known, and they don't have anything to do about it. So we have not yet achieved the highest point, let's say, of clearing out our conscience, which would be the opening of the fold of the files, let's say, of the secret police. The government cannot yet decide on this because it might implicate high-ranking politicians, even though they think that the most dangerous files have already been destroyed now. So maybe they also fear some kind of vendetta, let's say, from the individuals, and maybe they don't do that because of that. But yeah.
Now I can say direct one-to-one parallel with Yugoslavia. It's the same things. People, the older people have like half have nostalgia, half not. The young ones don't know about it, just know the stories, and based on those stories of which one of those halves they base their thoughts about this period. And as you said about the files, it's completely the same. I can say for Serbia at least that they still haven't opened some of them. They wait like 50 years or something since some of them are made, and then they can open it. Basically, waiting for the actors to die and because of the potential implications that will be bad for them. Yeah.
And also one of the biggest problems, like economic problems that we are left with, it's the issue with the lands, agricultural lands. So we still have a very big property issue with these lands because you have multiple layers of owners. So you have the owner before 1945, and then you have the government, and then in the 90s, the new government decides that everyone who has worked on the land should own it. And so now you have the new owner under this law, and then the old owner from before 1945 comes. There are some people who have this Ottoman registration, let's say, of their lands, and they say like, look, this is my land. And this is something that is identified in every report of the EU. So they say you should solve this, and only then we can like provide you more funds for agriculture. So it's something that is really impacting Albania, especially considering that around more than 50% of let's say the workforce are engaged in some way to agriculture. While for the rest sectors of economy, yeah, the bad thing was that we decided to destroy everything and to start from zero. So destroying everything that we had built for 45 years, starting from zero, the shock therapy, as they called it, was a very big mistake, like which is leaving also its implications even now.
This mentioning EU, it's the same thing for Serbia. I think Croatia made it completely, the thing of transferring the ownership back to the original owners. Serbia, I think, also did this to close the chapter. Basically, they had like moratorium or like this period of, I don't know, it was 3 or 5 years. Whoever comes in and proving who was the real owner before communism gets the land. And that's it. If you can find some proof, that's okay. If you cannot, if after it finished, it's it. And then they transferred it, and that's it. They have the clean sheet, and that's the final thing.
Yeah, but that would be a problem. That would be a problem in Albania because I told you like it was kind of a feudal system, and so the majority of the lands would be owned, let's say, by 10 big families, and then the remaining population would just be left without land. It was a problem that Albania never implemented a proper agrarian reform. like other countries did. So they implemented some kind of reform in 1946, and then they united all the lands later. But still, that was not, let's say, something legal. So it could be argumented that this was a communist measure, and that's the big problem.
Yeah. I was in my head. I was saying mostly not about agricultural, and I think it's similar with Albania. There was a lot of big landowners back then, but
Yes.
the thing was about small shops, small apartments, whatever. The communists came and took it over for themselves. So in that sense, those flats and shops, you could give them back this real estate. For the land, maybe it was also issue, as you said, not so different. Yeah, interesting. I want to give some more trivia about the communist period that I heard is again connected with what you said, that they could hear what's going on in other countries through some specific antennas. And since they didn't have so much access to the West, the most closest one was Yugoslavia. So they were hearing a lot of Yugoslav music sang in Serbo-Croatian, probably some Albanian from Kosovo, but mostly in Serbo-Croatian. So I was mesmerized. I was surprised when I heard that some famous singers still present today, like Lepa Brena, she's also to some extent popular in some areas in Albania, having concerts there. And I was like, but Albanians do not speak Serbo-Croatian. Yeah, but communism was the only thing they could hear from outside. It was like, oh. So
I would say this is kind of true. I mean, Lepa Brena popularity is mainly like in the 2000s, like some of her songs. And because, Yugoslav television and radio could only be heard, let's say, in the neighboring areas. So it was not so much in the rest of the country. Actually, it was Italian one. Like the signal from Rai was much more strong, and actually it was Italian music, Italian television, and for many Albanians, Italy was the image of West. So it was the free land, the paradise, let's say. And
so many Albanians speak Italian, the highest level of Italian speakers outside. Yeah,
and we have like this unique ability of learning it through television. Like the majority of people learned it through television. However, there has been this very nice, let's say, observation that in the top of the mountain in Tirana, they had the Albanian government, of course, had its own antennas, which were powerful enough to interfere with the Italian, let's say, frequencies and to disrupt them. And so while even the government would turn a blind eye, let's say, to the people kind of listening to Italian music and everything, when news was shown or when, let's say, activities of the Pope was shown, the signal in the mountain, like in the antenna in the mountain, would be strengthened so that this kind of activities would be blocked. And then it would be weakened again when, let's say, the news or everything was kind of, let's say, finished.
So there was always one guy who constantly following what's happening in the Italian radio and television.
Censorship was to the maximum,
So they knew some people could have the access, but they were like, we cannot block them all the time. But at least the main thing is to block the news. That as we are safe from the news, that it's okay, and some provocative things.
Yes.
Yeah, optimizing the resources, so to say.
Yeah, like what do you think about in the future of Albania in Europe, with like European Union or with some Balkan initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, future looks promising, but of course comes with its own problems. To begin with, European Union, I'm not so sure that it will be, let's say, something that will happen very fast or even in the middle term, because it's not only due to our problems, but also due to the fact that the European Union is not so happy to accept new members now, and it's kind of slowing down the integration process. So I don't think that this is the main, let's say, political development that is going to happen in Albania in the next 10 or 20 years. As for regional initiatives, they showed that they can start quickly and they can end even quicker. So we had Open Balkan, and like everyone was like, where did this initiative come from? They started that we are going to do this and we are going to do that. And they signed lots of agreements, but something common between Balkan countries we don't usually keep, or we don't usually apply what we sign in agreements. So they were like, we are going to abolish the borders and everything is the same. And then like one day our prime minister just says that now we don't want that anymore. We are going on in the future. So I think we have some pretty good possibilities of developing the economy, especially in the tourism area. Like this year we are seeing a boom in tourism. Like many people who I'm talking with now know Albania. Like 2 years before when I was here, like some of them would even think like, is Albania in Africa or in Asia? Like they wouldn't know that it was in Europe, and now they have heard from someone who was there, and it was nice. So tourism is one of the, let's say, of the bright spots. It needs regulation. It needs intervention from the government, because up to now it's only the beauty of the nature, and it cannot be sustainable only with that. I mean, the political, the judicial situation needs to kind of be improved in order to, let's say, create some kind of security for more investment from the outsiders. So if you change your laws 3 times per year, the outsiders don't come, the investment cannot come. So if you have instability, the investors cannot come. So that's the idea. I mean, we are progressing with European laws, but every moment that we see something that may be beneficial to one politician or the other one, we just forget about everything European, and we just go on. We had in the beginning of July, the European Union just stopped the funds for agriculture because they discovered that they were extremely abused. Like it was not only for Albania, but I mean, speaking about Albania, so there are many possibilities. It's a country that has many possibilities. Unfortunately, one of our biggest deficiencies is that we are having a very big brain drain nowadays, that we are trying to stop in the wrong ways. We are blocking now the diplomas for the doctors. They have to work 5 years in Albania, and then they have to leave after working 5 years, which is not the way. Like coming back to communist countries, in some Eastern countries, you had these exit visas. So you needed to get the exit visa to go out of the country, and this is some kind of the same situation. I mean, it's not the way. But to have economic growth, you have to have people, and people will stay only if you have economic growth. So this is a vicious circle that needs to be cut at some point, but this is not the way to do it.
I see again the same steps as from the past. It's simply not learning from the past. It's doing the repeating, like deteriorating moves, like from the past. Like in the 70s, they started deteriorating, and now again doing the same moves as before. What I noticed, like in Durrës, it's in the north, for our audience to know, it's already, the coast, the Adriatic coast, that area not so beautiful as in the south with the Ionic Sea. To be honest, to all my Durrës friends, sorry, but it's not as beautiful in the south. But nevertheless, the buildings are being built everywhere on top of everything, and just not really beautiful. It's just like building it, like the quality is just not so good, to be like mildly saying it. And as going to the south, it gets better and better in terms of nature, and everything is preserved there, and historical areas, and the road is getting better. But I still see lots of shitty looking apartments just popping up everywhere and just deteriorating the good looks there. And I'm just having afraid that it will not be any better soon, and only if some miracle happens. But
this is a problem, and it was like, apart from the appearance, it was a problem that cost lives. Like in 2019 we had a pretty strong earthquake, and 52 people died, and they died because the buildings they were living in were without any kind of protective standards. Or some of the buildings that have had protective standards, they had parts of like walls removed, and other things like removed, like trays and everything, to just open space without any kind of consideration. So now they are kind of trying to, let's say, like destroy these illegal buildings, and they are even proposing to put some kind of insurance, let's say, for earthquake and for natural disasters. So this would incentivize, let's say, builders to do something more strong and even more
That's a good move.
visibly nice. But in the end, yeah, this problem remains.
That's a good move. Yeah, when you incentivize them in that sense, okay, I need to make it, otherwise I'm gonna pay for it afterwards if it
Yes.
falls down. Yeah, that's I support this one. From my side, nothing more. On it.
No, also, I also ask my questions.
Kristi, there's not word to say how grateful we are for showing us all the, with quotation, fun facts about communism in Albania and post-Albania. Some of them were funny, but most of them are really tragic, unfortunately. But nevertheless, they were exceptional, world-wise. But hopefully in the future, as we talked about it will be getting better and better. People need to be to be hardworking and to stick together, and let's hope for, not for the Albania but whole the Balkan region, will somehow stick together longer than like a blink of an eye, and come to some fruitful solutions for the region.
Yeah, those are really important and must know informations for people that are following our channel. So thank you for joining and sharing with us.
For our audience, if they have some additional questions regarding this thing, please write in the comments. Kristi hopefully will answer. Or if you have some additional facts about Albania this period and afterwards, please also write them. We really want to know them. And stay in touch and on it, as we all the time say. Please, people, click like, share, subscribe, whatever. Most of you are watching, and none of them are clicking
contribute
subscribe.
To our channel. And thank you for who already did on the previous episodes.
Thank you very much. As Ona said, continue like this, and we have more guests like Kristi, wonderful guests like him. They wanted to come here. If they see, these guys are doing something interesting, and hopefully we're gonna come up with some new topics, and maybe Kristi will come up with some new topic and come again and have a good time here.
Of course.
Thank you once more, Kristi. Faleminderit shumë.
Thank you for having me.
Same.
A little fun fact from my side. We were talking about communism. I was wearing black and mostly red shirt. Keeping track with the episode. Very stupid from my side. Thank you once more, Kristi, and for all of audience. Until next episode.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.